This is the Compass Podcast, where we disrupt the everyday with glimpses of the divine. My name is Ryan Dunn. I'm a United Methodist minister and communicator, and part of my job right now at the close of 2022 is to direct the TikTok account for the United Methodist Church. If you're on the platform, check it out. It would be a big boost for me to see some of you on there. In running that account, I've encountered something surprising. The more theologically nerdy our videos get, the more views they tend to get. So for example, a funny video with silly jokes for International Joke Day, that gets hundreds of views. But a very cut and dry video of a pastor explaining the United Methodist view on the Bible, well, that gets thousands of views. A practice of rest and peace, hundreds of views. But what United Methodists believe about communion gets thousands of views. You get it. That's curious to me because it runs counter to what many of us might assume about bringing religion into a public space like that. Being explicit with our beliefs and thoughts runs the risk of putting some people off. And maybe it actually does to some degree, but to a greater degree, it allows people an opportunity to quench their longing to be known and to know others. Being explicitly theologically nerdy makes it easy for people to get to know us. And that's a big part of what a social media platform like TikTok is about. I've just recently made this connection, but many in the religious sphere made this connection a long time ago. And they've utilized that connection to build some beautiful communities and relationships through TikTok. That's right, there are pastors who have found TikTok to be a pulpit, insofar as TikTok allows them to begin conversations with thousands of people they might not otherwise have had any contact with. And these connections aren't just fleeting. Many of them are turning into relationships to the benefit of everyone involved. So I wanted to talk with some of these pastors. I chatted with 3 different pastoral TikTok influencers: Kelley Finch, aka Pastor Kelley on TikTok, Joseph Yu, aka Joseph.U, and Sarah Tevis Towns, aka Disorganized.Religion. I had 3 general questions I asked each of them. 1, what drew you to TikTok? 2, what kind of content do the users on TikTok really seem drawn towards? And then 3, what is TikTok, or how has TikTok impacted your parish ministry? The following is most of what they told me in response. So let's see how the divine is disrupting in digital space by talking with the pastors of TikTok. Starting with Kelley Finch, who, as we mentioned, is on TikTok as Pastor Kelley. She is a United Methodist pastor and also is planting a new church in Wilmington, North Carolina called Mosaic. Pastor Kelley, what do you make of this TikTok app?
It has completely changed my ministry, but it's been a surprise, and it's still almost every week is a surprise to me because I never was a social media person.
Okay.
Never.
Did you dive into TikTok with the idea of being like a pastorally presence, or what drew you there in the first place?
No, during the pandemic, my youth group, I was a family minister at Grace, and some of my youth group were like, Pastor Kelley, get on TikTok and like my videos. And I was like, absolutely. It was a way for me to connect with them. Yeah. And then some of the moms were on there. So I was connecting with people, and they're like, make a video. I made a couple. And then I made one where I was skateboarding in my clerical robe after church one Sunday. One of the kids videotaped it, and it kind of blew up. And then I started to realize there was actually more than just dancing to TikTok. Okay. So that's kind of, I stumbled into it trying to like the videos of the kids in my church. And then it changed my ministry and my life. So
well, what was the next step from going from a pastor in a clerical alb to, talking theology? Did you have a design in mind to make that transition, or?
Being kind of new to understanding I wasn't on Reddit. My youth group, I wasn't on any of that. I'm on Instagram and Facebook because I'm 48. So what I did is I just basically, after people liked and they started asking me questions about where I worked and what church it was, and I started sharing my journey. I moved from the Baptist church. I was an orphan from the Southern Baptist church that was hurt by it, and found the Methodist church, was literally across the street when I left my ministry in the Baptist church. and found a home. And so I just started sharing my experience about the difference between the Methodist church and the Baptist church, about why I was drawn there, about what I had found there. And people just kept listening and asking more questions. And so there was never a plan. I just was honest about what I believed and what I thought. And having that Baptist background and the fundamentalist kind of influence in my early life, it resonated and it became something very powerful. But there still isn't a plan. It just, okay. I think being honest in who I am and sharing my deep belief and the beauties of our church, the traditions and the hard parts and the good parts of our church, people are drawn to that honesty and fascinated, and it just kind of blew up from there.
Yeah. So was there like some reticence on your part in terms of just putting yourself out there? Were you like, oh, I don't know if I should share this part of my story, or are you open like that?
I think I was a pastor's kid. So my story, and especially coming from a Southern Baptist tradition, my story was the joke of sermons. My life was like, I mean, from my father and then even through me, I've kind of been in a small town or city public kind of space I've grown up in. So I don't have a lot of, like, I more so now have walked through with wonderful caregivers and therapists and stuff, opening up more about my journey. But sharing my faith is what we do as pastors. So I basically was just sharing my faith in a very nerdy church history Bible way, but sharing my faith, which is what I do in the pulpit. I just did it in 1-minute segments on TikTok. And no, I wasn't ever nervous. I being a female pastor in the southeast of the United States and being surrounded by a lot of people who don't agree with that, I've always had people pushing back. And so that didn't even bother. I mean, it hurts, but it didn't bother me. Mm-hmm. So I just went for it. And I figure sometimes we have to, as pastors, be the leaders and be the honest people and share. That's what we do.
But you have a pretty healthy following. Was there a point at which that kind of blew up? Was there like a particular video that you put out there that people just discovered and were like, oh, I want to know more?
Yes. And we're going to get nerdy Methodist here for a minute.
Right on.
Because it is literally my passion. In Sunday school, because of the pandemic, we had a mixed generation class, which is difficult to teach. So I just started diving into the Wesleyan quadrilateral with them. And so I would have like 5-year-olds and 85-year-olds. And we started we'd read a Bible passage and we started looking at the people in the passage. Like, what did they eat? What did their house look like? What did their daily lives look like? And then how did what they did lead to the traditions we're doing now, like baptism and all these other traditions? And then what was that like for our experience? And one Sunday we were looking at Mary and what Mary, the mother of Jesus, would have eaten and where she would have lived and what she would have looked like and the clothes she would have worn. And I did this video where I just took what we talked about in Sunday school. And in a minute, I said, Mary doesn't look like this. And I showed the traditional Catholic blue veiled that everyone sees. I said, this is actually based on archaeology, sociology, the Mishnah and Talmud. This is what she would have looked like. And it went crazy. In fact, it has over 2.1 million views. You can see here, I mean, you can't see on the podcast, but I have tons of paintings and t-shirts and mugs that people have copied. I think over 295 people have listened to my words and drawn Mary. And it connected with people because Mary became a real person, not this ethereal kind of being. And so then we started the Wesleyan quadrilateral. People would send me Bible stories, and either live or in videos, I would start with, we literally read it from the NRSV or wherever they wanted to. And then we would break it down. We'd talk about what the people in the story were talking about. And then we talk about how our traditions of the church have pulled forward from that. Some of the things we do across churches, or particularly in the Methodist church, have been pulled from that. And then how we apply it to our own experiences. And that, I mean, there are so many people I think that know the word Wesleyan quadrilateral that are like atheists and Muslims and stuff that follow me that are amazed by the fact that we do that. And that's what literally took me to 93,000 followers, is talking about how we as Methodists read the Bible and then experiencing that together. And then I literally read from the Book of Discipline, Book of Resolutions. Everything I share when they ask me about issues, I say, this is how we decide as a Methodist body, and this is what we've decided. And something about that gives it more power than me just as a single person saying, hey, I think we shouldn't be anti-Semitic.
At any point, did you feel this pull or temptation to like try to jump on the latest trends in order to garner followers? Like, oh, I need to figure out how to work It's Corn into my latest video or something like that. Was there?
Sometimes if something hits, if it really hits and resonates, I'll like want to jump in and do it. And occasionally I will, but I try to think that through a little bit. I mean, I'm not a dancer. I'm not going to do the dances, although with some of my fellow clergy I have, and some of the youth I have. But I think algorithms are very interesting on TikTok. And when people see me on their algorithm, I'm there for a reason. And they expect something, I think, more from me. Are
there specific questions that you seem to get over and over again, or are there specific points of curiosity that people seem to express consistently?
There are some questions that I say I will never stop answering. Okay. One, especially for our LGBTQ plus community. I'm sorry, I'm going to change that because I'm learning through TikTok, our 2S LGBTQIA community, the acceptance and love of God. And even though our church is in this confusing place, it's been a beautiful way to show how we have a voice in the UMC and how we change stuff that we feel is unfit or doesn't work with our theology. So that is something I will answer 1,000 times over because I want to make sure people know they're loved. And then there are a lot of questions I didn't expect, like people really wanting to know about like the finances of our church and how that works, because they see like the tax stuff and they see these big mega churches and how they're not opening their doors to our houseless community and all this kind of stuff. And so when people come with those questions, I try to find local churches or national churches or maybe even international churches that are doing that and saying, no, let me show you a version of what happens. And they want to see that it's not just me. And our UMC connection has been vital in that. They want to see that this is something we are experiencing around the world. And it's not just one pastor making money saying these things. This is something we work as a body. And those kind of questions still kind of catch me off guard because I feel like everyone should know about the UMC. But I always get new followers coming in asking the same, like, how does this work? So
Mosaic is a new faith community. It's officially launching, and it sounds like it's kind of already underway, but officially launching January 8th of 2023. What is one thing that you're going to pull from TikTok into your kind of IRL faith community there?
One of the parts of TikTok and the Methodist Church has been our Church and Society and our Book of Resolutions, and actually living outside of the walls of the church and talking about how our church is moving more and more, how we're growing and sanctifying ourselves and moving more and more to being grace and action. And so our local body here, they are the same thing I do on TikTok. We explain the book of worship and how worship works. And then we take the parts that are important and key. A lot of them want to know what Charles and John Wesley said about things, and we'll go back and we'll look at that here, even in my local level. And then we say, okay, this is what we want to keep, but how about if we change this? Like, for instance, our prayers of the people, like that time after our sermon, where we normally talk about the individual church concerns, because we are online and in person, and because the people that are forming our group didn't really want that to the people in the church to be the focus. They wanted the work in the world to be the focus. That's going to be like more of a social justice moment where I'm going to preach, but we're going to have different people from the community come up and either share their walk with Christ or share how we can walk in the world. And so what we did on TikTok, the deconstructing, which that word is overused now, and reconstructing has become what our church is. Like, we are really taking the fundamentals of Methodist life and putting them into action in our church in a way that in a way that I personally am having to break away from a lot of norms that I think are traditions of our church, but they're just what churches in the South do or churches in the North do. So it has really changed. One of the best things, though, it has changed if you talk to the people that I preach to, is that my sermons are a lot shorter. When you learn to do something in 1 minute to 3 minutes on TikTok, and then you preach for 20 minutes, you're like, I've been talking forever. Right. So there's some practical applications. My sermons, if I go more than 12 or 13 minutes, I'm like, that's too much. And the actual way our church operates is from worship to service to Bible studies.
Well, anything else you want to add?
I think just being authentic is very important. We, a lot of times as pastors, want to present this perfect image. And, there's filters, there's all these things, but the days that I get on there and I just do something off the cuff when my hair is not done and I don't have the perfect filter and I just share something from my heart have been the ones that have gone most viral. And in between sharing information, sharing love and grace. I don't talk back to people who hate me. I delete and block. I speak to those whose ears are open. And there can be an ugly side, but there can be such a beautiful side, such a communal side, that if you talk to the people with love and grace and you accept that love and grace and you stay in that place instead of get caught up in the ugly side of it, it's been beautiful. It has grown me spiritually. It has grown me into deeper connection with the Methodist Church, with other progressive Christians and our Jewish siblings and our Muslim siblings. It's just grown me. But you need to be honest and you need to be authentic. And I would love to have thousands of us on TikTok and across social media sharing that message, because I think that's what makes heaven on earth.
Boom. All right, let's get more perspective. Here's Joseph Yu, who is on TikTok as Joseph.U. Joseph is a pastor in the Episcopal Church and has also planted a church called Mosaic, but this one is in Houston, Texas. Joseph, let's actually start with the drip. Like, you got your clergy collar on right now. Like, do you find it important to kind of present the clerical drip within TikTok?
Not necessarily. I just wear it to work. And when I decide to make a video, I'm doing it with whatever I have on. I don't go and then change and then make a video of it. So, a lot of times I'll be wearing, Houston Dynamo gear because I have a lot of that. So, it's not intentional in the sense that for TikToks, it's intentional that I wear it in my neighborhood where my church is at, and I just end up making videos with it on, or maybe a lot of my videos are at coffee shops, like outside, away from the music, so that I can make the video. So I'm just recording with what I have on at that moment.
All right. So when it comes to digital content for me, I work from a calendar and I forecast it all out. And here's where we're going to be by the end of the week. And it sounds like when it comes to, at least for TikTok for you, you're just going spur of the moment, something hits you. Maybe Holy Spirit says, Pastor Joe, it's time to get on TikTok. Is that kind of what it's like for you?
I used to in the very beginning, have I made 10 videos and save them, set aside a day, make all these videos, and then post them up on every other day, 2 or 3 times a week and whatnot. And then it just got to become a chore. And part of that, I talked about this in a sermon once. After a while, when a video goes semi-viral and your phone just gets all these notifications, so much that you have to turn it off, there's this a dopamine hit that comes with it, and you just want more and more and more of it, right? And so then first
there's a lot of power in that published button.
It is. For the first 3 or 4 months, when the video hit and made like, resonate with people, and I was getting like the views and interaction stuff. The desire of it is to do something similar so that I get that same attention again and the same reaction and the same interaction and views and whatnot. And then what happens eventually is that you start chasing after the algorithm, and you no longer create content. You're no longer a creator, but you're a algorithm chaser. And then after like 4 months of doing this, I realized like I'm a 40-year-old man on an app that's not geared to my age people. Like, let's just do what I want, what I like, and on the schedule that I like. And if it resonates with people, great. If it doesn't, then I made something that I wanted to. I got something off my chest that I wanted to say. So now I think this is a good idea. Let's make it right now. I have 10 minutes, and let's hope I get it done in 10 minutes, and then. That's been my MO for the past 3 or 4 months.
Well, you talked about it being a little bit out of your zone as a 40-year-old guy. Sorry, don't want to age you up there prematurely. What drew you into TikTok in the beginning?
A lot of my friends were sending me videos of like just funny dog videos or comedic bits or whatnot. And then I was like, all right, let's see this. And I made the fatal mistake of downloading the app. And then once I was on, it's like, it's addicting. Like you can't stop. So that's, my friends started sending me all these videos and I just started watching them, and then I just stayed on.
Did you have it in mind when you first started making your own videos to be somewhat of a pastorally presence? Because your channel is you're representative about who you are as a minister.
Yeah, I never intended to make anything. I just was going to be a lurker on this app. Yeah, and then I saw these, then all these Christian content started coming my way. Both from what we would say progressive Christians and pastors and on what we would call conservative pastors and Christian leaders. And I was like, oh, if Christians are on this, maybe I can do something and offer my perspective on stuff. So yeah, I never intended it to make videos, but when I did, there's nothing else I can really talk about. Being a pastor has been such ingrained in me. It's all I can talk about. So I was like, well, might as well talk about something that I'm somewhat capable of being confident of knowing what I do and what I say.
So then, now that you've been at this for quite a while and you've actually grown quite a following, and some of your videos have taken off in a viral sense, like, has it impacted your ministry?
Yes and no. It has impacted my ministry in the digital platform, like on TikTok. I've exchanged a couple of emails, lots more than a couple of emails with people who are deconstructing, who have questions. People who are considering ordination and whatnot. But on the actual physical ministry where I am generous enough to get paid to do, there has been little to no effect. I may have had I had 2 people who've come and stayed at my church because they found me online. And then I had a handful of visitors who were in town or saw something and was nearby, so they came to visit, but haven't stuck. So it hasn't really translated anything into the physical Sunday morning here in Houston type of ministry. But I do feel like I've made some connections and relationship with people who I may never meet in person. There's a family in San Diego that found me through TikTok, and we've been in touch ever since. And checking in on each other and whatnot. So it's a both yes and no answer to that.
What kind of content do you see taking off for you on TikTok? Like, as you are getting questions, do they seem to hit on certain areas, or are there certain videos that you put up that you know are going to kind of score better?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's when I'm hyperly critical of the church. Those contents seem to resonate with the people, I guess, who follow me on TikTok. So maybe that's why. I try not to be overly critical, but there's, how do I say this? I want to say the Augustine quote where he says, the church is a whore, but she's also my mother. That kind of
Well, there, you said it.
If you need to edit out. I'm sorry. But I love the church, but I also know what we should and can be, and how even my church and myself have have fallen short of that, of what we should aspire to be. And so, I like to, being critical of a church and then offering a different insight of scripture is the two things that seem to really, really please the lowercase g God of algorithm.
Gotcha. Okay. In a different way, as you're being the lurker on TikTok, does that inspire you in ministry in any way? Like, are you finding some questions or, figuring out ways that like people are presenting questions of faith that helps you put together a sermon or put together other TikTok content?
Yeah, I've been connecting with a lot of deconstructing people, and some of the questions that they asked, I have either forgotten about it since my deconstruction happened in seminary, which was like early 2000 to mid 2000. Or I just never thought of it that way. So having that fresh insight of questions, I feel like it helps me stay grounded to trying to be relevant to the people I can actually connect with in person. So people who have all these questions really help me see things in a different way. And I don't think I would have gotten that if I didn't have the connections that I made on TikTok.
Sarah Tevis Towns, who you may have recently seen on the Kelly Clarkson Show alongside Sean Dromgoole. She TikToks at disorganized.religion and is in parish ministry at Church of the Good Shepherd, which is a United Church of Christ congregation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pastor Sarah, what drew you to TikTok?
Well, I joined TikTok at the beginning of the pandemic at the advice of my church administrator. And I should say church administrators are underrated and underappreciated, and we should all celebrate them. Erica at the church is my biggest supporter and cheerleader and protector, and she was doing some videos on TikTok and said, you should do something for the church, teach some things about the Bible. This is a great platform. And I said, that sounds like a terrible idea. But I kept watching. And so around Easter time, I made my first video and it got a surprising number of views. I mean, my first TikTok, right? It probably got like 500 views, which for a new person is a ton.
Yeah.
And it took me hours and hours to record because I recorded and re-recorded and, I was really uptight about it. But the other thing is that it got me engaged with people during a time when it was really hard to be engaged with other people.
Yeah. Well, for you, once you started TikToking, what was the first video that really kind of took off? Like not just 500 views, but like to the point that you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how far this is reaching.
So my early viral videos were actually about service dogs.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a disability. I have a seizure disorder, and I have a service dog, and it drives me nuts that people bring fake service dogs into stores and say they're service dogs, but then they bark and they come after me or my dog. And so, so the first video I got that had over 1 million views was how to spot a fake service dog. I also had a video go viral that was, again, not about progressive Christianity per se. It was about what to wear to a protest. This is when the Black Lives Matter movement was taking off. It was after the killing of George Floyd, and talking about, as a white woman dressing really nice to a protest. I don't know. It was sort of tongue in cheek, but that you can be part of that group of folks that protects the people who are most vulnerable at protests.
So these days you're getting a lot of traction out of some deep theological type material. I mean, you present it in a somewhat whimsical kind of way, but it's deep. What drew you into addressing those deep theological topics on TikTok?
It was the audience, really. Early on, I was doing the service dog content. Maybe 1 in 10 videos, I would touch on some sort of theological topic. And people jumped onto that and said, oh, I have so many questions. And so it was the audience who begged for that content. So I want to know more. A lot of people had never met a female pastor before, which surprised me. A lot of folks had never met a queer-friendly pastor before. And so they were just curious. They were fascinated. They wanted to know more. And so that's why I dove into that. Most of my content now is answering questions that fans have asked. For example, I don't talk a lot in my church about angels and demons. I haven't talked about Lucifer in my church, possibly ever.
Yeah.
Or, the angel Gabriel. We don't usually spend a ton of time talking about, the book of Enoch. It's not even in our canon, right? It's apocryphal, but the TikTok audience is fascinated by that, and they wanted to know more. The topic of homosexuality in the Bible, of course, is still a big one. In my church, that was settled a really long time ago. It's not something we discuss all the time. People don't say, well, how can you reconcile the Bible and homosexual relationships? But the TikTok audience, they're folks who've never heard that information.
Yeah.
Which was, it was surprising.
Are there questions that you're starting to see over and over again?
What's fascinating is that the audience has come with me. I feel like the content I'm doing now is different than the content I was doing 2 years ago because the audience is more educated. And it's not just my content. Of course, there are 250 progressive clergy doing content alongside me. And so we're educating the TikTok audience. So we're able to do different and more, I don't want to say complex, but we're doing different content than we were 2 years ago. One of my characters is really good evidence of that. I have this Karen character, which I have mixed feelings about. She's blonde. She's very judgmental. She started out being really judgmental of progressive Christians in particular. But the more time she spends with me, Karen, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I play Karen. I put on a blonde wig and put on this persona. And
if you look deeply, you can tell.
Right. If you look, it's pretty obvious it's me. But it is a part of me, right? It's a part of who I grew up as, who I was socialized to be. But Karen has had this incredible character arc. And that's part of why people stay tuned into my channel, is they want to see Karen's growth. And they're growing alongside her.
Where did Karen come out of?
So Karen is a meme that is common. Karen was a shortcut. And I say I have mixed feelings about it because I do feel like now, at this point, people are using the Karen meme as a way to attack women specifically. And so as a feminist, I have really mixed feelings about having a Karen character. I also have 4 members of my church named Karen.
Yeah. who are probably incredible. Nothing like the TikTok right. Karen, right?
Right. But TikTok Karen is a shortcut because Karen became a name for women who were explicitly racist, judgmental, wanted to talk to the manager about things that were really not issues, like they wrote her name in the wrong place on the Starbucks cup kind of thing. Or there was a man picking up trash in her neighborhood and she thought he was suspicious. And the other thing is, it was a way for me to process some of the difficult and ugly questions that I got from people in my real life. Not my church members necessarily. I think that would be a boundary violation if a church member said something really offensive and then I put it directly in a TikTok and made fun of them.
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
going to do that. But, hearing somebody outside the church saying, do you really need a rainbow flag on your church building? Well, that's the kind of question that Karen was able to ask and that I'm able to respond to. And it inadvertently empowers people to have then a response. Because that's a question a lot of people ask. Well, I don't know if we want to be reconciling or open and affirming. I don't want us to be the gay church in town. All right, well, how do you respond to that? As a Christian, as a loving person, as a church person? And so it gave me an opportunity in 1 minute, all my videos are a minute or less, to have Karen get it. So it's also satisfying because in my videos, Karen always comes around.
Okay.
Right? So not everyone in society, if I said, no, we need a rainbow flag on the church building, because the assumption is that all Christians are bigoted, because historically we've been awful to LGBTQ plus people, among other populations. And so no one is going to trust us. It's like a surfer who's been bit by a shark. If a shark says to them, well, I'm one of the good sharks, the surfer's going to be like, I'm still going to be cautious around you.
People are friends, not food. Yeah.
Right. People are friends, not food. The surfer's still going to be cautious. Well, a lot of people are cautious around Christians because they've been hurt by Christians. And so if we're not over the top, undeniably affirming of marginalized groups, they're not going to feel safe here. And so by the end of that video, and that's one of the videos that did really well, Karen was able to say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Now, does everyone who says things like that get it within a minute? Probably not. But yeah, it's also helped me process through some of the difficult things I hear people say that are hurtful.
But it sounds like you've drawn a healthy line between, I guess, your pastoral ministry, or, your parish ministry, and you've been at Church of the Good Shepherd in Albuquerque, New Mexico for quite a while, correct?
Yes.
Without bringing that over into TikTok and like putting people on blast there, or using it as a way to kind of, I don't know, let out your frustration from the parish ministry. But are there ways that TikTok has impacted your parish ministry?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. How so?
So first of all, my preaching is much better. I'm more courageous. I had a fear of all the vulnerability that comes with being a public figure on TikTok. And what I learned is that when I do put myself out there, the positive feedback is so much greater than the one or two negative comments. And what TikTok has taught me is that being vulnerable, being real, connects with people. The other thing is, when I go live once a week, I go live for about an hour once a week and have theological conversations with people around the world at different faiths. And they ask me super tough questions that keep me on my toes. And so I'm more engaged with scripture. I'm more engaged with my faith. I'm more connected because I'm always talking about my faith with people who are outside the church, not just people inside the church. Certainly, I've gotten better at improvisation in the church, and I also find that my church members are more connected, and I'm still working on this, but our church members are more connected with younger generations. It's also changed our membership, right? We have people joining who are TikTok fans, and that
you do.
We do. So the last time we had new members join, half came from TikTok, which is remarkable because I'm in a relatively small, I'm not in Houston, right?
Yeah,
I'm in Albuquerque.
Right.
So the fact that we have TikTok fans that live in the city is pretty exciting. And then the fact that they start coming to church. But I've also started using TikTok videos in church. So, and not just mine, but colleagues of mine. We have more technology in the church in general, but I'm able to share this incredible wisdom in a fun and offbeat kind of way that my church really likes. It's given me some just new ways of connecting. Now, one of the things I'm trying is to do collaborations with church members. And I have had a couple church members come to live sessions with me on TikTok so that TikTok fans get to talk to actual church members. It's tricky because of the pacing. Cool. My church members tend to talk a lot more slowly and tell super long stories. And TikTok goes really fast.
Yeah.
But it's been valuable both to my membership and to the TikTok audience to be like, oh, it's not just Pastor Sarah who feels this way. There's an 85-year-old woman who has my back, who loves me, who believes in a loving God, who cares about justice. That has a big impact. So I'm hoping to do more collaborations with my church members going forward.
Who are some people on TikTok, some creators that inspire you?
Oh, there are so many. So I love, let's see, Rabbi Seth is the first one who comes to mind, just because I'm learning a lot about Judaism from him. Rabbi Sandra is another. Nerdy Priest is one of my favorites. Nerdy Priest is Anglican, and so I also learn a lot from them. Mm-hmm. I like Reverend Brandon a lot. It's fun because we discovered Reverend Brandon when he had like 12 followers and got him into the community, and now he's blown up. Ben Shapiro just posted a video against him, and so he's doing great work. What I like is that all of these people are doing their own thing. It's very authentically them. There's not a formula for success. Well, we could talk more about the formula for success. I have a whole YouTube series about how to be successful on TikTok as a clergy person. The people who inspire me are the folks who are authentic, who are just speaking truth, and then also educating us about something. But also not taking themselves too seriously. That's one of the things I like about TikTok versus Instagram, for example. It's not all shiny and beautiful. It's very real. And that appeals to people. Joshua Maria Garcia. My page is also populated by community organizers and other folks doing really interesting things.
Tell me what Karen is going to learn next.
Karen still has a lot to learn. But one of the shifts
Don't we all?
We do. Because now Karen she has not departed from her judgmental nature. She's just judging conservative fundamentalists instead. And that's not the direction that maybe Jesus would want us to go. We're working on it. Calling out bad behavior or toxic behavior, yes. Saying that people are evil, not great. The thing that I'm shifting now is that Karen, in some of my videos, is the hero. She's the one who teaches me as the pastor something. So this does a couple of things. First of all, the pastor's not always the good guy, which empowers church members and all the people on TikTok, because to embody this different message, which is it's okay to question clergy. Historically, clergy were the ones who were always right. And part of the problem historically with the church has been that there hasn't been a lot of accountability for the clergy. And so by doing these videos, I'm also modeling being a clergy person that receives feedback from someone who is occasionally difficult to listen to, who doesn't always say things in the kindest manner, and recognizing that there's some truth in what she's saying. And so that's good for me in my parish ministry, because I do have people offer feedback, sometimes in ways that are not the kindest. So I practice, but also just remembering that the pastor is not the center, that people are able to read the scripture, are able to be in community, are able to listen to the Holy Spirit and discover the good news for themselves. And sometimes they have insights. In fact, oftentimes they have insights that the pastor hasn't thought about.
Yeah.
So Karen's learning to use her voice in a more healthy way, maybe.
All right. Divine disruptions in digital space. Kind of like this podcast, am I right? Oh, thanks for taking this walk with us. The Compass Podcast is brought to you by United Methodist Communications. If Compass is meaningful for you, then check out another episode. If you like this one, then How Gaming Inspires Spiritual Connection from September of 2021 might be up your alley as well. Or Friendships and Community for Digital Natives from March of 2021 might be a good one too. While you're listening, leave a rating and or review. Compass comes out every other Wednesday, unless we're interrupted by a holiday, in which case we'll hit your feed the following week. But we'll be back online in 2 weeks' time, in this case, talking about the myths we tend to believe at Christmas. Chat at you then. Peace.